Yeah, all right. This is episode 3.
It is episode 3.
Dapper Devils podcast. Coming at you with one of the installments of content that we're going to do on a regular basis. And that is dive into some manga and anime. I'm completely new at basically all of it. I've seen,
I was going to say, you're a fresh fish in this one.
I am. So for me, that's really exciting because I don't know anything. I don't expect
I was going to say, you've got no expectations for anything, really. Like, you just kind of have to go off if someone says this is good or this is bad.
Right. And so I'm kind of, flying blind with some decent help, but...
Well, sure, but...
But I think the thing that is important because I'm new to it, and if you read it, it's a little bit different than if you watch it.
Well, because you kind of also make your own voices for people. Like, you get to decide what they sound like, what their tone is. I mean, obviously, yes, like, word bubbles and speech patterns kind of help with that, but, like, you might read it one way, and then if you watch it, it's completely different.
Well, yeah, so I will tell you, like, when I read manga, I don't yell in my head when I'm reading it, even though the action panels are telling you that this expression is elevated and all that. I still don't yell in my head.
Right.
And on the shows, there's a lot of like yelling.
Yeah.
Especially like just when the characters kind of want to make a point, which is a little bit of a difference between Japanese and American animation is that, the way the characters express themselves is very different.
Absolutely. But I mean, I feel like once you kind of get past that initial barrier, it just becomes fun. Like,
yeah.
Like I was telling you the other day, the show Black Clover, basically wizards, all that. It's fun. It took me 30 episodes to really kind of get past the main character because I was like, oh, God, he's just fucking annoying.
Yeah.
And then they dial him back for sure, but...
Oh, see, look, we stepped right into it, and I totally forgot to do my due diligence. So,
your sponsors.
First, let's say thank you to our sponsors of the show. We've got Pixel Popcorn Media Group, Unscripted Studios, James Thomas Productions, and we're not sponsored by Diet Coke, but both of us are drinking that. So,
it'd be way cooler if we were.
Coke, if you're out there,
hook it up.
Maybe you need a couple guys like us. So anyway, back to manga and anime. So I, sometimes I have a hard time getting past certain shit, and I think that is, you have to take that with a grain of salt when you start watching.
Absolutely.
Anime.
It's like suspending your disbelief for a certain movie, but it's suspending everything.
Yeah, you really have to just let go and give away to every conventional idea you have about what an animated thing is supposed to be.
Right. You just enjoy the ride for what it is. I mean, like you had said the other day, once you kind of get past that preconceived notion of like whatever art style and you just enjoy it for what it is, it's way better.
Yes. And also, a lot of them start childish. But a lot of the characters that they introduce are either in a middle school or high school setting.
For the most part, yeah.
And then but they all kind of escalate to a mature level as far as what the main character is dealing with. So that all sheds itself pretty quickly. But yeah, you got to be patient, at least a few episodes of patience to get to the meat of the story and see where is this going to go.
Well, and I feel like a lot of the problem too with just because anime is so vast and different, one anime might get you hooked immediately. And then another one might be like, oh, on episode 4, I started getting hooked. So obviously, because every story is different, there's different pacings for it. But like, as a viewer, sometimes you're like, well, I want to be hooked immediately. Like, I want to like what I watch. I get it. Like, you and I will always give stuff a fair chance for the most part. Well, we usually watch at least 3 episodes because it's an hour's worth of time.
Right.
But like, certain times, like there was one, and I know I've gotten shit for it before, but I watched the first episode and nothing happened, and I was like, I'll get to it eventually. I'm not interested right now.
There's a difference between nothing happening and there's a good story. Like they leave you suspended and wanting to know more.
I was not left suspended or wanting to know more.
So then, yeah, that's a tough sell for me in the future too. Like I might watch it later, but there's other things so much more compelling to me that
One Piece.
It's yeah. So things like that just fall down the list, whatever that one was. But
We did not watch it. It was, I mean, this is my opinion, but it was that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I've had friends tell me I would love it if I liked these other ones, and I'm not saying I won't. I just can't bring myself to watch more of it right now because, like you said, there's other stuff that's more pressing to me or more interesting right now.
okay, but that's the name of it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, right now, anime's been going through a weird thing where it's got some long names where it'd be like, there's one which it actually is a good show in my opinion. Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's that. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. I could go down the list of Crunchyroll and start reading things, and you would just be like, is this real or fake?
Crunchyroll is an app on which you can watch all these things, by the way.
Yes.
If people didn't know. Without context, Crunchyroll sounds like some kind of food.
Like a sushi.
So like an accompaniment to sushi. Or a specific name.
I mean,
of like a Crunchyroll. Maybe it would have like, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't eat a lot of sushi.
No, not a fan.
Okay, so we'll get to the point. The point is talking about some anime and some manga, and there's a little bit of a blend of stuff that we watched and read, and we're going to talk about it all and try to get some people interested in stuff that they have not maybe looked at. The first thing I have is the Junji Ito stuff.
Man, it's so weird. Like,
Yeah.
do you have a specific one you want to talk about?
Well, the one that we watched, Fashion Model, is kind of the one that sticks out for me.
So far, like everything I've read or seen of his, that is my least favorite story. Not because it's not good. It's because it makes me so uncomfortable because of how she looks.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate it. Like, obviously, yeah, that's what he's going for. That's his
Right.
whole thing. I just fucking hate it. Like,
She's
grotesque.
incredibly nightmare fuel. Like,
Very gaunt. Like,
yeah, and super
8 feet
tall,
Yeah.
and like has a head the size of a horse, and it's like, yeah, and then she's got chompers, like
A shark. No, she is an abomination.
yeah. So everything happening with this model, and you're just like, well, I mean, obviously it's an unlikely model, but whatever. That's not the real point of the story. The point is that
She's just a monster. Like,
she
eats people.
yeah, she literally eats people. And so, like, that's what happens. These amateur filmmakers get recognized and have a new project that they're working on, and they hire one model, traditional model, and then the other applicant happens to be this crazy-looking model that was giving one of the director's actual nightmares. Like, he was so scared of the picture of her.
I think the timeline's like he saw her months before and then all that. But then the worst part too is like his friend who was the director hired her just to fuck with him.
Yes.
He's like, oh, it's gonna be great. And then Spidey's like, what, are we just gonna make this like a fucking horror movie now? Like,
right.
Which, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it becomes a horror movie because this character, they are in the woods filming a scene, and she's like, when do I get my time on screen? She's getting pissed because
Right.
the other girl's getting all the attention. So what does she
She's not a monster.
do? She goes into the woods and she eats the other girl.
Yeah, and then the other guy, one of the guys realizes it, chases him down to tell the friends, and then he gets eaten. Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, but so that's Junji Ito in a nutshell. He's got very, very bizarre looks at stuff.
Well, like, and one of my favorite things about him as well is like because he has so many different short stories. A lot of his characters look very different, which is cool because it's creative.
Yeah.
But then there are times where they do look similar, which again, it's gonna happen.
Sure.
Especially as a creative, like you can only think of so many different faces. But no, like when he wants to go out there with like this is gonna look weird, he goes there.
Oh yeah, he's the king of weird.
Yeah.
Like so
Dude, him
weird.
and Kentaro Miura, the guy that writes Berserk, or wrote rather, because he unfortunately passed away.
Yeah, Berserk is another amazing series we'll talk about at some point. And yes, those drawings, that art is so bizarre at some points. I'm
Would
just
you
like
say it's erroneous?
erroneous.
Bosh. Have we not talked about that?
No, I guess not.
We'll talk about it on a different one because I don't want to get too involved with Berserk if you don't want to.
No, because I'd have to recollect some of my memories of it.
Yeah.
So that's Junji Ito. And then the next thing that we watched was this Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yep.
Kaisen? Okay. So like I mentioned before.
I was going to say first impressions on that one.
Yeah. So I write notes down when I'm watching stuff because I'm sure I'll forget whatever I'm thinking.
It's the marijuana talking.
It's at least the marijuana remembering. So it starts out, like I mentioned before, it starts out a little childish, and then it picks up once you realize that there's going to be like demons involved in it.
Yeah.
And once the demon element comes into the fold and the character very quickly gets heralded with his power, by the end of the first episode, he's already
a badass.
Yeah, and he becomes what you know he's going to be in the saga. And so at the end of that very first episode, I was super interested to see more.
I was going to say, too, I mean, you also only watched one episode.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you did it because, like, for me, like, once I get hooked in a show, I'm like, well, I'm just going to watch all of it or as much as I can. But, no, I mean, like, for a first episode, I think that one's a really good way of, like, drawing your attention, getting you interested, and leaving you wanting more.
Yes, it did a good job because they hit, what are they, 23 minutes ish?
Yeah, I think because like originally with like commercials 30, so yeah, 21 to 23 minutes typically.
Yeah, so they get going pretty quickly in that show, and that's one that I look forward to watching more of. Because I like that kind of macabre style. I like the darker stuff. I think that is interesting and different conflict.
And so, because I started rewatching it again last night and this morning, one of the things I do enjoy about that, and Demon Slayer does it really well too, they don't really do a lot of recapping. You know, they'll do maybe like a minute's worth, but the way they do it is, like with Demon Slayer especially, you know, one episode ends, the next one begins from the same thing, but it's more of like from like a different character's perspective. So rather than like the long drawn out, like, oh, I'm swinging the katana, it's very quick and like, okay, cool, this is what happened in real time. Yeah. And so far, Jujutsu Kaisen's pretty much done the same thing. And I like that because, again, it's just get to the point. Obviously, yes, as a viewer watching week to week, sometimes the recap is nice. Other times, when you watch like we do, where it's like, I'm just going to binge this, I watched it 15 minutes ago. I didn't forget.
Right. And I think, you know, that's something that like the culture is now, where that's how I watch TV. If I get interested, I usually just binge. I'm not a week to week watcher. I don't think TV has been serialized like that in kind of a while because people are not patient, or their interests are so fleeting that the idea of being actually connected to a show and waiting for the next week, I'm like, nah, man, I'll wait till there's like 10 or 15 episodes.
Yeah. Well,
that way I'm never waiting.
It's pretty much what I'm doing now with One Piece, because like I'm already caught up with the anime, I'm caught up with the manga, and so now it's just kind of like, all right, I'm going to wait a couple weeks here and there. I'll watch 5 or 6 episodes at a time. Let's see, in a month, like I'll probably hold out for an entire month to then make like an event for it, because it's going to be pretty badass.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that all at once.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to kind of ignore people talking about it. I know like everybody gets upset about spoilers and stuff, but it's like, just don't listen.
Well, but also, I mean, you and I are kind of blessed in the sense that, I mean, everyone could be, but like in the sense that we don't use social media for stuff like that, so we don't really see spoilers. And like in my case with One Piece, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to read it week to week as I can, I don't have to worry about that. You're far enough behind, but also, I mean, you went, it's been on for 25 years, or been out for 27 years at this point, something like that.
Yeah.
26. But you went your entire life never knowing a thing about it. Granted, just because you weren't in that community and all, but even still, you're not like going on forums or looking stuff up. So you're not going to be like, oh, this happens to this person.
Right. And I think that, you get spoiled by the access that you have to that stuff, especially on social media. Like if you follow certain
People
accounts that you know
are gonna post about it.
That's just their whole thing, is talking about what's new and relevant. That's good. I mean, people do want to hear that, and plenty of people go out and they see it right away.
Well, yeah.
So it's not a spoiler. But I also think you have the choice to not be spoiled. You just don't.
Sometimes it's a little hard because someone might just say something, but it's like, all right. Some certain things are like, are you really considering that a spoiler?
Well, that's also true. Like, there are very few things, because a movie's not made with 100 climaxes,
right?
So there is.
But like if like a cameo happens and someone talks about it and someone's like, that's a spoiler. It's like, I can see why it is, but it's like you're not getting any information on the story.
Well, exactly. That's like saying that Alfred Hitchcock walked across the screen, and you're like, okay.
Well, yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what he does.
No, it's funny though. Speaking of like avoiding spoilers, so because we talked about it like years ago before I got into One Piece, I knew things about it. Obviously, like I knew that certain characters died or certain events happened, and I mean it's because it's been out for like 10 years at this point. This particular thing, when you were reading it and you were like, oh well, obviously they're gonna save Ace, and they're gonna go do this. It was so hard to be like, yeah.
Well, because I didn't know anything about it, but
exactly.
you figure that you didn't just write to me for 10 years about these people to just kill them,
right?
But that's one thing that I will give credit to, like Game of Thrones. I'm not the hugest fan of that show.
Sure.
But I did watch the first season and really enjoyed it. And then they lop off Ned Stark's head, and I went, oh, what the fuck?
Kind of making you feel like, oh, nobody is safe.
Like, that was my hero.
Right. Dude, Ned Stark was a badass.
Yeah, and then he was headless and dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fucking A, okay, so I guess it's that kind of show.
Yeah.
And so
well,
I was okay with it.
Like we were talking the other day, and again, I don't know how everything unfolds because I've only watched it, and I'm sure, manga readers know more than I do. But with Jujutsu Kaisen, where, the main character, Itadori, he gets told immediately, if you do this, you will die at the end of this journey. And I think that's kind of cool because it's like, look, yeah, we all like the characters and we all get attached to them, but like I like the idea of like, well, no, nothing's finite or everything's finite. Like
there's a shelf life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I think I like that idea of storytelling because it's not your typical, well, everyone's going to survive. They might. I'm sure they could write it in if they really wanted to, but I also like the idea of them going, nope, we told you at the beginning he was going to die. He's going to die at the end of it.
Yeah, I think it's okay. And depending on what the legacy of that story is going to become, that character may be there for as long as he needs to be, and then the next thing happens.
Right.
And he's just the thing that pushes it forward until you get to a bigger event.
I don't know how true or accurate it's going to be, but I think the creator's trying to have it end at the end of this year.
Okay.
So, I think it started in 2018, so 5 years, not bad.
So then we'll move into Full Metal Alchemist, which was another thing that we watched. And actually...
We watched 2 episodes of that one.
We did watch 2 episodes of that one. And it's another one so let's see.
It's a dark show.
Well, it's sarcastic.
Absolutely.
And silly.
Absolutely.
And like lots of side humor.
So I forgot, because I haven't seen that show in a while. I forgot how great it is because it starts immediately with Armstrong coming into the fold, who is probably one of the goofiest characters in that series. Like, they're all silly in their own capacity, but he is consistently ridiculous, and I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say, just from the jump with that guy, he's like dying to take his shirt off and scream things at you.
Dude, if you had muscles like that, wouldn't you?
I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
If I had Arnold strong.
Yeah, exactly. His one little, curl.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's silly, but it's also really cool.
Yes.
Like, there are cool things happening, and I think that's another thing that I like. I mentioned it yesterday when watching it, is that anime they will give you answers a little bit faster than other storytelling. Like, they're like, this is happening, and then they explain it to you.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, cool, because I didn't want to think about that for 10 episodes.
And then kind of forget and then be like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be done really well. Like, I mean, shit, One Piece. The
Sure.
entire thing. What's the One Piece?
Sure.
But, no, I mean, like, you know, with Full Metal Alchemist, because you get episode 1, you're like, oh, cool, he's got a metal arm and this and this. And then episode 2, it's like, oh, yeah, this is how all this happened.
Right.
Because they got too close to God and paid for their hubris.
Yeah, and so you have a resolution to that loop or that thought, you know, and then you can move on with the show because you're like, okay, now the motivation is this.
Right.
We want to fix it. And so they're searching for what, the Philosopher's Stone? Is
Correct.
that and that basically is
The magic alchemical stone that can do anything.
yeah, so you're outside all rules at that point.
Right.
And you
You don't
can
have to-
undo
You can do literally anything. Like, you don't have... So the whole thing with Full Metal Alchemist and alchemy is the idea of equivalent exchange, where you give one thing of equal value to get something else.
Right.
The Philosopher's Stone just basically removes that rule, where it goes, you can just get this.
Yeah.
So, but...
So-
go ahead.
Well, I was just say, so now they're brothers that are in search of this.
Yep.
And they're also being wielded as a
Their weapons.
mercenary of the government because of what they did was illegal.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the cardinal sin for all alchemists of trying to do human transmutation.
Yes. And so they got into trouble. The government now owns them, and they're kids. You know, so like they're super talented alchemists at age 11 and 10, right? Is that whole?
They're basically like prodigies.
Yeah, and so, but anyways, everything starts happening very fast. There's an immediate villain, there's immediate fights and conflict, and just cool action sequences. And
Speaking of villains, I thought it was really funny because, again, having never seen the show whatsoever, when they show Fear King Bradley, which, again, funny to me, King Bradley.
eye patch, is that eye patch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so, yeah, you saw eye patch, mustache, and sword, and you immediately went, is he a bad guy?
Yeah.
I was like, God damn, like, but and I think that's kind of funny because, like we were saying, you know, like growing up, I watched a lot more anime, so I was used to like heroes or good characters that had like an eye patch or like scars and shit like that.
Right.
And you know, with Western culture, you see the eye patch and you go, villain.
Yes, it was definitely branding, brain branding or brainwashing. I've been brainwashed
You've
to
been
think
conditioned.
a certain
Yeah.
Even my conditioning has been conditioned.
Right.
But thank you, Mos Def. That's yours.
Jesus. No, but I thought that was funny because I was like, damn, like, all right. But, I mean, overall, like, I really like that show, too, because, one, I think the story's cool. But I also just like the idea of alchemy, you know, the science and magic. Like, I think it's super cool. And I think the way that show did it, it makes it fun. And it just kind of gives a good perspective on things. Like, I mean, again, like I said, it was episode 2 when they perform the human transmutation, and you see Ed literally comes face to face with God.
Yeah.
And he's like, well,
He also comes face to face with the haunting version of his mother that they bring back to life.
yeah, that thing's terrifying.
Yeah, and like I think that's why I like the anime so much more. Is
They're not afraid to shy away from like the grotesque.
yeah, they play with the dark side of stuff.
Just wait.
They
That show's gonna get fucked up.
and they help you. Like, I feel like there's just consequences more.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so there is an ultimate reaction to your action.
Yes.
And I feel like maybe more in American comic books is you're used to
Superheroes and
it's never really all the way resolved.
well, it's also never like their fault.
Well, yeah, they won't take blame.
Right.
But the fight never really ends. It just
Postpones and prolongs.
yeah, and then I mean I guess you get the Avengers and that stuff and there's a conclusion.
Well, sure, but like we were talking the other day with like Batman, where again we both love Batman. He's great. Realistically, though, Batman puts Joker behind bars. Joker's getting the death penalty.
Yeah,
Like,
he didn't
the
kill
insanity plea only goes so far.
Exactly. It's like, well, that's cool, but you keep escaping and killing people, so we cannot let you keep being caught.
Right.
It's not like
There's always a limit. I mean, Batman only has so much influence on the police and the public.
It's true.
But
and there are a lot of people that will say Batman is the biggest villain of all.
Absolutely, he is. He
because
creates all the other villains.
Yeah, he like perpetuates this.
Yeah, he's just as insane as all of them.
Yeah.
He in his head, he thinks of himself as Batman, not Bruce, and he dresses up like a bat and beats the shit out of people.
Yes.
That's not a sane person.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be a standard definition of sanity.
No.
He's like, oh, that's a picture of sanity.
No, he's the model citizen, you know?
All right. And so now, with all of that being said, that's all the new, right? Oh, no. I don't want to. So you call it a palate cleanser. This is what he says about this particular last thing that we'll talk about briefly. And I will not disagree with him because of all of the things that we watched. This one was like the most ridiculous.
And that's why, to me, it's a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
So it's Kaguya-sama Love is War, which, I mean, the whole concept is just stupid. It's two people who are obviously in love with each other but don't want to be the first person to confess it. And it's just antics happen where, you know, like they'll start fighting each other or playing mental mind games. And that's why I call it a palate cleanser, is because it's like nothing happens. You don't have to really pay attention. It's just dumb fun.
Yeah, like it is. It's stupid.
It's hilarious, though.
It is very funny. But do I misunderstand the concept is once they admit they're in love, then they have to die?
No. So the way that intro kind of starts is really just making the joke that, like, whoever confesses their love first is the bitch of the relationship. And neither one of them wants to be the bitch because they're both too proud.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Okay. So then it's even sillier, really.
Absolutely.
Like, because, yeah, they're like...
But, yeah, like, the way they, like, make it... Because it's, you know, because love is war, that's why, like, they're shown with, like, weapons, like, fighting each other. They don't actually get weapons in the show.
Got it. Okay.
Because they're just high schoolers.
But yeah, that one's ridiculous. And I liked it. I thought it was funny and silly and exactly what, you know... something that you don't need to pay much attention to.
Yeah,
that's what you want. Like,
what is it? I think it's like the first 5 minutes after they kind of give the exposition of everything. It's like they were going to fast forward 6 months because literally nothing happened. Like,
yeah.
All the just self-aware jokes, I think, make that show even funnier.
Yeah, I agree. I really appreciated it, and it is completely different. You know, it's not going to have all of the crazy spirits and demons and bad guys, and
it's gonna have crazy things, but for different reasons.
Yeah, well, I don't know yet, but I know like the setting that it's living in doesn't lend itself for that to happen, and if it does, then it's cool. But
it's one of those, like, for all intents and purposes, it's in reality. You know, obviously they still do very anime things, but like essentially no one has superpowers. There's no villains. It's just kids in high school.
Yeah,
being kids in high school.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it'll stay pretty light.
Oh, the entire time.
And it's ridiculous. Excuse me, Diet Coke. Maybe you shouldn't sponsor us because I'm gonna tell people that you get burps.
I mean, that comes with the territory. We all know that.
So is it issue 60 that I am in, or was it 61?
Volume 60, I believe, is where you're currently at with One Piece.
Okay, that's the one with so Ace dies, Whitebeard dies. Paramount War ends. Luffy is destroyed mentally and physically.
Yep.
And he goes and
Jinbei's
seeks.
or Jinbei,
he
depending
is.
on.
And that's another thing too. Like, since I haven't watched the anime, a lot of the character names I'm mispronouncing them as I read them.
Well,
you know?
I mean,
but
I always forget because I think there is a translation thing. Sometimes it's Jinbei, other times it's Jinbei with an M instead of N. I always forget. So I think I usually just stick with Jinbei.
Yeah, that's kind of what I say in my head. So Luffy's on a refuge on the island of women.
Amazon Lily.
And Jinbei is there kind of as like almost like a spiritual guide.
Well, yeah.
Really.
Because he's basically telling Luffy, like, you can't give up. Like,
right.
Much as you want to, you still have all your friends.
Yeah, and he like Luffy's will is broken. His brother is dead. He feels responsible for it at some capacity, or at least not being able to save him. One of the biggest things for Luffy always is that he wants to protect and save everyone.
Right.
And so that dealing with the reality that he wasn't able to do that, it's kind of the first time you've had to look at him deal with that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, let's think about it though. So when they're at Saba Odi Archipelago, they encounter all the pacifistas with Kuma.
Yeah.
That's like their first major loss, because every other time they fought anybody or liberated any island, they won.
Right.
So like that's like their first introduction to, you got the shit kicked out of you.
Oh yeah.
And they felt it. And then obviously for Luffy, he goes through Impel Down, all of that. But when he gets to the Paramount War, it's even more of a loss. So it's like he still doesn't have his crew; they're all gone.
Right.
And then he loses his brother. Like
yeah.
So he's just been getting knocked down further and further every time.
Yeah, and he's alone, so to speak, because his crew are
Literally,
all
not metaphorically,
dispersed everywhere.
Yeah, they're all around the world.
But this is another moment too where you kind of get to see that he's written to be the Pirate King, because Jinbei is there, a former warlord of the sea that basically told the Navy to get fucked.
Right.
And now he's taking care of Luffy because he promised Ace he would do it.
Right.
Rayleigh.
At first, Jinbei was kind of like, "I'm not going to do it," and Ace was like, "Nah, you should do it."
Well, and then I think then because he saw how Luffy was.
Well, yeah, he like immediately he got respect. Like, is Mihawk the one that makes the comment of like, like that's his most dangerous power? He can like, how does he phrase it? It's like he can like.
He says you have the power of people following you.
Yeah, like persuasion, basically.
yeah.
Like you can persuade people to understand why they would do it.
Yeah, people just want to be behind you.
Right.
And
same with Buggy.
Which is odd and true. But yeah, so that's actually what I'm alluding to right now, because this is all going on and his crew is not with him. And Jinbei is taking care of him. And then all of a sudden, Rayleigh, the Dark King, he swims out of the water.
Like a fucking badass.
Right? He swam from a different ocean, too.
Yeah. He swam from Saba Odi.
And so he's there to help Luffy. And then he's obviously has Hancock at his disposal because she's madly in love with him. And so you still look at it and you go, he doesn't have any of his crew, but he has all of these ridiculously powerful people
all in his corner
surrounding him and helping him. And you go, yeah, this guy is he's the one.
Right.
And then it jumps from him with Jinbei into the backstory of Sabo, Sabo. Ace and Luffy as kids, as brothers, being young and mischievous, and kind of how that all happened. You learn that Sabo is a son of an aristocrat, and he's actually on the run, living at trash in a trash pile with Ace and Luffy.
Yep.
And they're stacking up treasure as kids, because they've all agreed at age 17 they're going out to sea and they're leaving everything behind. And then Sabo gets captured back by his father, and he gets forced to be in the aristocratic lifestyle again, and he leaves early. Like, he escaped, right? Because he wasn't 17 when he pieces out the first time.
No, he was a kid. So if memory serves, because I haven't read this one as recently, like there's the whole thing where like they're like, oh, we're gonna burn the whole trash island down, and he doesn't want to be part of that, and so he's like, dude, fuck this, I'm out, and he just hops on a boat and leaves, and then
that's right. I forgot that
fucked.
Part of it is they're trying to clean up the town.
Yeah.
And the celestial dragons and all the high up government people are coming to inspect it. And so by the time they get there, they want all of the trash to be burned and but they're not even just burning trash. They're
burning
planning to burn entire
villages.
Yeah, like that basically live and subsist on this trash pile because they repurpose trash from the rich idiots and sell it back to them. So Blue Jam and his gang of pirates trap them in and light everything on fire, and they're trapped there. And
then Dadan just kind of does Dadan.
Yeah, so like those things go, because first Dragon kind of comes in.
Yeah.
And Dragon,
it's the most absentee parent ever.
Oh yeah, he's definitely
At least in One Piece.
He's definitely, I mean, I guess it's great that he showed up when he did because he saves Luffy. He bashes down a wall.
Yeah.
And now there's an escape route, but Blue Jam and what's that other guy's name?
Oh, fuck if I remember.
In his crew. The other guy in his Daruma or something. But the other guy, they're like standing in front of him, and then Dadan shows up and is like, no, I'm going to fight you, and Ace and Luffy are leaving. And at the same time, Sabo decides he's going, I'm going to be a pirate right now.
Right.
And he gets blown up by a bazooka.
Yeah.
By one of the celestial dragons, and so Luffy and Ace believe he's dead.
Yeah.
Until he sends a postcard.
Well,
later.
Did you ever notice like Ace's tattoo? So it's ASCE.
I mean, I've seen it there, but I never really broke it down, I guess.
Oh, okay. So it's A is for Ace, S is Sabo, C is Crybaby Luffy, and then E is Whitebeard, Edward Newgate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it's basically like all the people that were important to him. He's wearing on his sleeve. And then obviously Sabo has the X because he's dead.
Yeah.
But
is he? We don't know yet. We don't know yet in the whole mythos where we're at. Yeah, we don't know yet. So that all goes down.
What's funny too, because we were talking about it the other day, specifically like that part with Sabo when they were all having sake becoming brothers, and I'd made the comment that in the anime, because I watched most of the anime before starting to read it, in the anime. That's not there. Like, Sabo's cup is not there in the slightest.
Yeah.
And I was making comments where it was like, because I binge watched it. So I saw like 15 years of content in the span of like 2 months. And I was like, well, that's not accurate.
Yeah.
And then, funny enough, you just got to that point where it was one of the question corners. Mm-hmm. And Oda was talking about how there was like the smallest little shadow in the corner of a panel for Sabo's cup. And he was like, I was really hoping nobody would notice. And I was like, this motherfucker don't miss.
Yeah, he doesn't screw up. And that's something, did we talk about it last time about how he hand draws every panel, even doesn't recycle anything?
I don't think so. I think we were talking about this the other day, though.
Okay, yeah. So like he teaches you a lot about his process when you're reading it, and he does the question corner, and he allows fans to submit questions, and then he answers them all, and he's very candid.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's one of the best parts.
Yeah. So he's very much there for his fans. Like if you have to me, One Piece is really a love letter to all of his fans.
Well, sure.
And that's why he hasn't concluded it where he probably could have at any point.
He can end it whenever he wants.
Yeah, and but you really kind of learn and feel that about him through the question corner and how playful he is.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned in one of them, like I guess 2 volumes ago, he talks about how he doesn't recycle any panels, even though he could use the same panel because it's basically the same thing. He draws something a little bit different because he says, I get paid per page, so I feel like it's cheating reusing panels. And
Which
then
is actually funny thinking about that. I think it's in one of the first, or at least in the first omnibus of Invincible, they make a joke about something like that where it's like, oh, like, you reuse panels. Isn't that kind of cheap? And then it's the same panel for like 4 different panels, and it just goes, no.
Yeah.
But like obviously that's the joke for it. But no, I mean a lot of comic artists or manga artists will do that. Which, if you're able to, it's not the worst. But yeah, like in this case, if you're getting paid per page, like just
you can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like, dude, speaking of which, because like I mean obviously we both think Oda's awesome, but so right now I'm assuming he's in recovery. He just had surgery for astigmatism. So right now, like One Piece is taking, I think it's like a month hiatus. Everyone's been kind of looking at that like, so you've been having this issue for years now. Once your eyes are better, you're just saying that One Piece is going to look even better? And it's like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's just super cool because it already looks great. Like, super stylized, super fun, but like the idea of like, oh, it's just going to get even better now. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean it's a fun journey, and if he's gonna amp it up after surgery, that'll be super cool.
Right. Do you want to talk about what you think the One Piece was, given the conversation we had the other day?
Well, I mean, I think it's nothing.
Well,
like it's for everybody. It's different.
Well, sure, but no, specifically, there was one item that you had brought up that you thought it could be because it's in every one of the volumes. at the beginning.
Oh, the flintlock.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is true. That's really the only drawing that you see every time.
Right. At least in every volume.
Yeah, it's at the beginning of every volume. Like he does his little opening thing, and then boom, there is the flintlock.
Right, which makes sense. It's a single gun. People call guns piece. I got my one piece.
Yeah, I mean, I probably had some beers and came up with that one. But he does also reveal to you throughout the time, because Sabo tells you as knows he's leaving, basically, that Luffy and Ace are his greatest treasure.
Right.
And
that's why it's like, obviously treasure is different for everybody. It's a little further into the story, so I won't talk too much about it. But they do talk about like Roger's crew and when they got the One Piece. So they talk about stuff revolving around it, but then it kind of leads more mystery because they make comments on it, and it's a whole thing. But,
yeah, but that's why you keep reading.
Right. I mean, I know,
so
like a lot of people think that the One Piece is just sake, which I think would be hilarious. But I mean, again, at the end of the day, it's the journey.
Exactly.
Like that's the real treasure.
Yeah, I think that, and it's funny, like, because I haven't seen those panels you mentioned where they talk about how Gold Roger's crew gets the One Piece.
That's much later.
But like, because I haven't seen it, do they say they physically possess the One Piece or they get the One Piece?
Can't tell you.
Like they understand.
I don't even want to tell you what happens when they find the One Piece. I just want you to get to that point because it's funny.
Okay.
Again, they don't give you any information on what it is, but it's what happens when they find it.
Okay.
So,
well, I actually think that's a really good place to end.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jump into the next volume and get moving on that because the story's about to go somewhere cool. Oh, totally forgot. Yeah. So, all of this has gone down. The Paramount War was huge.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Luffy's already stirs up trouble everywhere he goes. And as soon as he regains consciousness and his will to persist, he goes straight back
to Marineford.
Marineford and
rings the bell
16 times.
Ushers in the new age of pirates.
Yeah, so the Navy talks about for them when they ring it 16 times, that's a new year. Customarily, they'll do 2 for the death of somebody, and then a pirate should never be ringing it. And so, yes, Luffy does it 16 times to signify ushering in a new era of the pirates. And then some of the characters that we started to meet that have high bounties on them react to that.
Well, yeah.
And start mobilizing in their own way as a reaction to it. And so that's kind of where it's at. And this is right when Oda took that 2-year break now, right?
No, you'll actually... So this is like right before it.
Okay.
Like specifically the 2-year break, you'll understand why it's a 2-year break.
Got it.
So...
But yeah, so that's where we're at right now. We're going to do more manga next week. We'll do it every week at least once, unless people like it a lot, and then we'll, add more. But that's it. That's episode 3. Thanks for joining us. Proverbial YouTube like, subscribe, and
ring the bell.
Ring the bell 16 times.
Hey.
And peace.